last year. I think last year was your first march, was that not? And I have to say, well done. Yeah, it was definitely an orange rippling going down the roads of Antigua and Barbuda, taken up by many. What inspired last year's event in the first place?
Well, Integrated Health Outreach is an organization that has at its core women's empowerment. And also working with vulnerable communities. So from the inception of the organization, the objective of women's empowerment and gender equality has been a large part of what we do. And in terms of our ability to bring forward certain initiatives, bring forward certain projects, we leverage our capacity to partner with various agencies and civil society groups, as well as what donors we may be able to get to come on board to support us. And the idea would have come out of a number of persons around and within Integrated Health Outreach, and it would have blossomed from there. And I must admit that I can take absolutely no credit whatsoever, because I wasn't with the organization at the time. So I'm really bigging up my colleagues in this sense. And it was a very heavy lift last year. They cooperated with the Directorate of Gender Affairs, as we are doing now. And it started out, I'll tell you actually, it started out as something that was envisaged to be much smaller. And the feeling, the sentiment of the group was that, this has the potential to be something quite significant. So as opposed to bringing out a few people, and nothing's wrong with small demonstrations of anything, but as opposed to bringing out a few people, let's see just how many people we can get on board to do this. And the organization was pleasantly surprised. Just around, I think, over 1,000 people would have come out to participate. And I think the message that sent to all of Antigua and Barbuda was just how much all of us, as much as we do not often have discussions, I guess with the regularity that we should, about gender-based violence, the reality is that all of us are quite aware of the prevalence of that kind of violence in society, regardless of whether we are addressing it. The fact is we are aware of it.
I also find that some people don't know that they're in it. Mm-hmm. They don't recognize or know that they're in it. You're talking about the workplace as well. It's not just in the home. It's not just getting beaten up or anything like that. It's, being, working in an environment where there may be more men than women, or even more women than men. And where you as a gender, where you're the minority, say you're the female and there's less females, but you're being addressed because of the way you look, mm-hmm. The way your body is shaped, or I don't know.
Workplace sexual harassment.
That is gender-based violence, is it not?
Absolutely correct.
Absolutely, and some people may not even realize that, although they might see it as workplace harassment, they're not actually seeing it as gender-based violence. Right. So 1,000 people last year, to credit to IHO and Directorate of Gender Affairs, that 1,000 people, whether they recognize or understand it, but they may also be victims of it as well. And and I'm glad that there's a forum that they can come out. They don't have to say anything. They can just walk. Yeah. And their presence alone is a significant response to what's going on. I mean, looking at last year, what were some of the lessons that you learned from not just the march, but the whole of launching the gender-based violence march and everything? What have you learned? Have we made any improvements here in Antigua and Barbuda over the last 12 months?
Well, one of the things that I would say is we are keenly aware that it is necessary to have tangible objectives that you can work towards, in addition to advocacy. Advocacy is important. It's important to get people to come out. It's important to get people to participate, to raise their awareness and to remove that veil of silence that tends to surround certain things. And you bring people out and you say, this is something that you can talk about. And you demonstrate to everyone in society that society is awake and aware of this issue and is saying zero tolerance to it. But at the same time, we realize the potential in that mobilization for achieving actual concrete objectives. And one of the things that we are working towards as an organization, in partnership with the Directorate and a number of other groups, is actually the establishment of a shelter for women this year. And we have been able to secure a pledge from the government in terms of a space in which that will be located, land to be allocated, and we are working towards building out a plan and a strategy to make sure that that is a sustainable institution that essentially funds itself and adds to the institutions we have in Antigua and Barbuda that respond to gender-based violence. That was one of the lessons we learned. The other lesson that we learned has a lot to do with the participation of men. That was why the march was billed as Men and Women United. I think, and this is even my personal experience, is that when you speak of gender-based violence, and usually when we speak of gender-based violence, for the most part, by and large, simply because of the fact of how we live, we are speaking about violence against women and girls. I mean, there are broader understandings and conceptions, yes, but by and large, because the majority in terms of the cases is women and girls being victims of domestic violence, physical violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, and so on and so forth. That is often what we are referring to, more often what we're referring to. One of the things we realize, and one of the things that I've realized, is that when you speak about gender-based violence and violence against women and girls, there are quite a few men who are not necessarily ready to get involved in an active sense. They see it as an advocacy issue for women. Okay, so women will talk about gender-based violence. Women will protest gender-based violence, as opposed to men taking up that mantle equally as well. So that is why we build it as Men and Women United, because we wanted to push that message that this is an all-of-society approach. It can't simply be one half of society advocating for an end to gender-based violence, and then the other half of society, which more so tends to be the perpetrator of that violence, not taking part. And that is an initiative which we have taken on board this year, is to try and increase the number of males who participate. We were very happy last year, in fact, that we got certain institutions, male-dominated institutions actually, that took part in, like Defense Force, police, and so on, and you saw people out with their children, youth groups, and so on, community groups, churches. We were very pleased with the mobilization. And what we are looking to do this year, one of the lessons, or the second lesson I would say, is to increase that male participation.
Well, again, my message to men is that not all men are perpetrators. And I think that's the message that needs to come out as well. When you're not being looked as the person that's causing GBV, gender-based violence. No. In fact, there are some men who don't want to admit it, maybe too ashamed or what have you, to admit that they are suffering under gender-based violence. And gender-based as well comes financially as well, where finances are being withheld or controlled by and being dictated as, like a carrot to a donkey kind of thing. That is also gender-based violence. So not all men are perpetrators. And this year, looking at the participation, and as I said, Mr. Murdoch has suggested and said that they want more male inclusion. And I really do want to encourage men to come out, because, as I said, not all men are the perpetrators. Now, has anything changed for this year and in the march this year? Are there any changes? And looking at registration this year, how is there anything different taking place in regards to registration, and who are you targeting?
Well, we are hoping to get everybody. In terms of registration, it's a simple registration process. We would have cleaned up any issues that we might have found last year in terms of maybe, let's say, little data gaps that we thought might be more beneficial this year. But it's a very simple registration process. Try to keep it very simple. It's a link that you can find if you go to Integrated Health Outreach's social media pages or the Directorate of Gender Affairs. I'm sure you'll find it there as well. You simply, if you search Directorate of Gender Affairs on Facebook, or you search Integrated Health Outreach, you'll find it pinned to the top of the page. I'll just let you listeners know you can also WhatsApp 736-4446. That's me, and I'll just send you the link directly to register.
Well, he sent me the link, and he's right. It's very, very simple.
You
don't have to put in your name, because everything comes up. It says name. You go to the box, and if your name will pop up. And so Alison Bambrell, went through, and then there's asking you. All of them are yes or no answers. Pretty much it's yes or no. Do you want to be a volunteer? Yes or no. Do you want to take part in the march? Yes or no. What size are you? That's the part I couldn't work out. I wanted to get double, like a medium and a large. I wasn't sure there, son. I wasn't sure. But it really is easy to fill in. I've registered. I've registered already. Registered to be a volunteer on the march. as well, because there's 2 sets of volunteering on the form as well. So read it through and be a part of it. If you can't, sometimes we feel like as an individual we can't do anything. But as a collective, we can do much. So instead of being a silent or quiet voice by yourself, join us. Join me. I've registered. Yes, so I'm on the radio station, but no. Sometimes outside of the radio station, you've got to, there are things that you want to stand up for. This is one of them. Gender-based violence definitely is one of the things, as well as mental health and child education. You know me. So yes, I've registered. So get yourself registered as well, and targeting everyone. Yeah, there's no limit on the ages either, is there?
No, not at all. Not at all. And what we have done is we reach out to different groups. Yeah, we reach out to youth groups, and that could be, because youth is a broad bracket. You could be looking at young adults, you could be looking at teenagers, you could be looking at kids, and so there's different youth organizations that we've reached out to, Youth Parliament, Girl Guides, those sorts of organizations, to try and bring young people on board. Businesses as well. We reach out to businesses. We try to make it a little easier for them. We tell them, look, if you don't want to get all of your staff to fill out the link, just collect everybody's names and shirt sizes, and we will work with you and just make life simple. In terms, I come back to the issue of youth, and I'll throw over to Raisa. One of the things that we're doing to connect with youth is actually coming up this Saturday. Exactly. We have a workshop. I'll allow her to say a little more about it.
Yeah, it's called Change Starts Here, Youth Against Gender-Based Violence. And it is a workshop where young people can come out and learn what gender-based violence is, what it looks like, what a healthy relationship looks like. Because I think, sometimes we can get very caught up in saying, this is what you shouldn't do, this is what you should avoid. And there's not as many messages saying, here's what you do look for. Here's what safe behavior and safe relationships do look like. So there'll be some of that. And we will also be giving the attendees an opportunity to make placards that they can then use at the walk, right? So everything is really tied into one thing with a pretty little bow. So that's coming up this Saturday. I believe the venue for that is the Multipurpose Center. It should be starting at 10 a.m. And so that is specifically youth focused. I know the UN puts the cap on youth at 35. So, if there's anybody who feels like they want to get involved in that way, definitely go out on Saturday and be a part of that. I think it's going to be a really, really solid experience.
I think the registration link up both same pages again, IHO as well as DoGA. And of course 736-4446. I'll send the links directly to you.
No problem. I want to say good morning to you guys that are joining me on the Facebook. Kelly Morrissey says, in the law enforcement community, gender-based violence includes harassment, physical abuse, sexual abuse, forced marriage, domestic violence, sexual assault, and other forms of abuse. So thank you for that, Kelly. Kelly's a police officer over in America. And so, he's very engaging and very willing to talk, which is a great thing for us here at 97.1 FM. And again, I think the idea for Saturday is amazing. It's brilliant. Not only are you getting learning, but you're also using art as a platform, using English, using language, because you want these placards to be powerful. You want to use selective words and things like that, or even just gender-based violence, the big letters printed out there. But it's also important to encourage our young people, as you said very, very eloquently there, Raisa. There's some young people don't know what a good relationship looks like. They really don't. And they don't know how to protect themselves, put them in a safe place. And because sometimes they don't want people to know what they're doing, these things are often under the radar, and nobody knows who little Shirlene's boyfriend is. Did he go to this school and that? You understand? And so there's a sense of, and again, looking at possessiveness.
Yeah,
holding someone as a possession and not that you're a significant individual. Being safe, knowing their parents and that parents know parents, and everybody knows who they are, where they are, telephone numbers, contact. And some people are like, oh, but that's intrusive. No, that's safety.
It's community is what it is.
Community. I like that. It is community. And again, I'm not blaming men. All right, but we need to start instilling in our women as well, because women are guilty of gender-based violence.
I think what happens is that So gender is a function of our society. So men are socialized to behave in certain ways and women are socialized to behave in certain ways. And on both sides, there are missteps. There are behaviors that each sex would participate in that aren't necessarily healthy or balanced. And the goal of, I think, anti-GBV messaging and work is to make us collectively more aware of where those issues are. And, Kieron very rightly pointed out earlier that women are disproportionately affected by this type of violence. And there's a whole systemic reason as to why, but that's not what we're talking about today. But I think solving it, finding solutions, does require input and investment from both men and women. We both have to realize, okay, there's some things that I'm going to do as a woman that maybe society told me it was fine to do because I'm a woman and I have that right. Because my gender is woman, I get to do certain things and say certain things, and the man just has to deal with it. And I would have to unlearn those things. Similarly, there may have been things that society would have taught Kieron that as a man it's okay for him to do, and the woman just have to deal with it, and he may have to unlearn those things. And it's just, we're all unlearning and relearning and replacing negative habits with positive ones together.
And that definitely is what we need, not just here in Antigua and Barbuda, but globally. Globally. The world is a small place, and with social media and other things, it's made it even smaller. And even the language you use towards each other on those platforms also should be, we need to unlearn so we can relearn. Now, before we wrap up, and very poignant as well, looking at the fact that, sadly, there might be somebody listening this morning, all right, or watching, that listening to what we've been talking about this morning, realizing, oh my God, that's me. Mm-hmm. That's me, wherever it is, whatever age group it may be, because gender-based violence does not have an age range. It's for both sexes, as we've discussed, and sadly it doesn't have any age range. This can go from pre-teens, early teens, all the way up, even in fact in primary. You might find young people not talking, using language that's not appropriate. And so if that doesn't get kind of like nipped in the bud, it could actually progress into something far more negative. So if somebody's watching or listening and needs help, either of you, what can they do? Who can they contact? Either of you.
Well, I know that in Antigua and Barbuda, there's a 24-hour crisis hotline for persons who have experienced sexual violence or gender-based violence, and I think that's something that, as a nation, we can be proud of, that we have managed to establish that, and I commend all the persons who have worked over the years to bring us to that point. You can call 1-268-463-5555, or just to simplify that, 463-5555, or WhatsApp at 734-4555. And I think Raisa would be better placed to speak about the actual process that happens if you do reach out and you need assistance.
Yeah. So definitely call the hotline, that 463-5555 number. That is run by the Support and Referral Center, which is a subsidiary of the Directorate of Gender Affairs. That is the arm of the Directorate that specifically deals with our gender-based violence prevention and response. So somebody will answer that line. They will take some information about what it is you're experiencing and what services that you need. And if necessary, you can come in to the Support and Referral Center. That is on the corner of Nevis Street and Friendly Alley in that pink building across from Idris parking lot. You can't miss it. And same thing, once you come in and you let us know that you need to speak to somebody in the center, they will take your information. And I want to be very clear that this is a client-centered process. So this is not going to be you come in and then we tell you what you have to do. You tell us what it is that you need, and we will do our best to put you in touch with organizations that can help you with meeting those needs. So for example, if somebody is in a situation of domestic violence and what they want is to find a job so that they can tuck away some coins and eventually get out of that situation, we can put you in touch with various employment centers to help get you on the way to finding a job and all of those things. I want to let you know that If you have children, there is a child-friendly space in the center as well, so you don't have to worry about whether or not you can bring your kids. There is a specified space where they can sit and relax while you, the adult, deals with one of our crisis center workers, and probably, have those intimate conversations that you may not be super comfortable having in front of your children. We've really tried to think of as many things as possible to make this useful for people who are going through this very traumatic, very difficult process. And so, if you do need that support, do reach out. We can do protection orders, any of those sorts of things. So there is help available.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate you sharing that information. I can remember when that centre was first opened and was launched with the support of the United Nations.
Yes.
At the time, and very much a centre where you can go, as you said, take the children,